In 1975, one American filmmaker walked into the California desert with $100,000, a skeleton crew, and an idea that every studio in Hollywood had already told him was unemployable. 18 months later, that film had grossed $8 million without a single major distributor, without a studio's blessing, and without a frame of footage that any mainstream cinema of that era would have touched. The film was Super Vixens. The man was Russ Meyer. And the story of how it was made is one of the most remarkable and most overlooked chapters in the history of American independent cinema. Today, we go inside that story. The visionary director who reinvented himself after back-to-back failures. The multilingual European model who became his greatest muse and turned down Hollywood's most lucrative offers to protect her own principles. And the fiery redhead who, in the same calendar year, appeared in one of the decade's defining cult films and two major Hollywood studio productions, all while building one of the most awarded careers her generation ever produced. This is the making of a 70s cult masterpiece, and the extraordinary women at its center. To understand Super Vixens, you have to understand the man who created it, because Russ Meyer was not a director in any conventional sense of the word. Born in Oakland, California in 1922, Meyer grew up without a father. His mother, a nurse, raised him alone, and when he became obsessed with cameras at 14, she pawned her own wedding ring to buy him his first one. That camera went to war with him. Meyer served in the elite 166 Signal Photographic Company under General George Patton's Third Army landing at Normandy, filming the liberation of Paris and documenting some of the most critical moments of World War II on 3 5mm film. His wartime footage was so exceptional that it later appeared in the 1970 Academy Award-winning film Patton. After the war, Meyer tried Hollywood. Hollywood said no. So he built his own alternative, shooting Playboy centerfolds, then self-financing a string of independent films that were simultaneously celebrated by film scholars and condemned by censors. Roger Ebert collaborated on his scripts. Quentin Tarantino cited his influence. Film schools studied his editing technique. But by 1974, Meyer had endured 2 consecutive commercial failures. His marriage had collapsed. His planned follow-up film had died with it. He needed, as he later described it, a return to everything that had made him. So he flew alone to Hawaii, sat in a hotel room, and wrote the entire screenplay for Super Vixens in 8 days. He rewrote it 9 times. Then he drove to the California desert and made the most commercially successful film of his career. But no film is more powerful than the people who inhabit it. And the women Meyer cast in Super Vixens were anything but ordinary. Of all the performers in the Russ Meyer universe, none appeared more frequently or left a deeper impression than the woman the world knew as Uschi Digard. Her real name was Ursula. Her birthplace, Switzerland or Sweden, depending on which interview you read, remained a deliberate mystery. Even her birth year is uncertain. She preferred it that way. What is beyond dispute is the world she came from. Uschi spent her formative years in a strict convent boarding school, a place she later described as a cage. The nun strapped her dominant left hand to her body to force her to write with her right. The discipline was severe. But within those walls, she became something remarkable. By adulthood, she was fluent in 8 languages: German, French, Italian, Swedish, Spanish, Danish, Norwegian, and English. She had traveled across Europe, the Middle East, and Latin America. She had worked as a translator for the Olympic Games in Mexico City. She was, by any measure, one of the most intellectually accomplished women in the industry she was about to enter. She drifted into modeling almost by accident. After settling in California in the late 1960s, people kept telling her she should. Within months, she was on the covers of major men's magazines across America. Russ Meyer noticed and cast her in film after film, eventually giving her the role of Super Soul in Super Vixens. But here is what the industry never broke. Despite being one of the most in-demand performers of her era, Uschi Digard refused every single offer of explicit content, every time, without exception. As she later said herself, she made her reputation through the tease. Everything was simulated. Her principles were not negotiable. She retired in 1982. Her autobiography, provisionally titled I Used to Be Uschi, was reportedly completed in 2013. It has never been published. The story of Uschi Digard, like the woman herself, remains only partially told. If Uschi Digard was Meyer's European enigma, his other featured star in Super Vixens was something else entirely, an all-American firecracker whose 1975 alone reads like the biography of 3 different careers. Born Sharon Kelly on 1 December 1949, Tennessee, and raised in Kentucky, Colleen Brennan was discovered dancing at the classic Cat Club on the Sunset Strip, one of the legendary Los Angeles venues where Hollywood's underground met its mainstream every single night. She had fiery red hair, a freckled, expressive face, and a natural screen presence that critics consistently struggled to quantify. One reviewer put it simply, Colleen Brennan could say more by arching a single eyebrow than most actresses could say with a full page of dialogue. As Super Cherry in Super Vixens, she delivered one of the film's most energetically memorable performances, precise, committed, and instinctively understanding of exactly what RUSS MEYER's films required from their cast. But here's the detail that makes 1975 remarkable. In the same year she appeared in Super Vixens, Colleen Brennan also had a topless cameo in Shampoo starring Warren Beatty and Jack Nicholson. And she appeared in Hustle Robert Aldrich's hard-edge police thriller starring Burt Reynolds, cast as the murdered daughter of veteran actor Ben Johnson. 3 films, 3 completely different worlds, 1 year. She retired by choice in the late 1980s, citing the AIDS crisis that had transformed the industry and redirected her business acumen into building her own home entertainment recording studio. Colleen Brennan never stopped being a professional. She never stopped being an entrepreneur. She was, in every sense, a woman who built her own legacy on her own terms. Principal photography began in March 1974 under the desert sun of Blythe, California, at the Crest Motel and the Sultan's Den, before the crew relocated to Quartzsite, Arizona. RUSS MEYER, as always, served as his own director of photography, controlling every angle and every cut himself. The cast was almost entirely drawn from Meyer's own universe. Charles Napier, who had actually retired from acting to become a journalist for a trucking magazine, was personally brought out of retirement by Meyer to play Harry Sledge, the film's psychopathic, corrupt police officer whose moral collapse drives the entire narrative. Meyer's structural concept for the film was precise and deliberate. Rather than one dominant female lead, he would introduce 7 each arriving, as he described it, like a new linebacker, each one prefixed with the word super. Each one arriving before the audience had time to grow comfortable with the last. The film's satirical underpinning was rooted in Meyer's wartime experiences. The villain's name, Harry Sledge, carried echoes of institutional authority corrupted absolutely. German marching tunes scored key sequences. The supporting cast included a character named Martin Bormann, played by Henry Rollin. These were not accidents. They were deliberate provocations from a veteran who had filmed the liberation of Europe and never forgot what unchecked power looked like. Even the ending broke the 4th wall. As the villain faces his fate, the Roadrunner cartoon's iconic sound effect plays, and the antagonist turns to acknowledge the audience with a resigned look. Comedy and consequence collapsed into a single cinematic moment. Pure RUSS MEYER. And then, the cultural coda that no one predicted. Bruce Springsteen mentioned Super Vixens by name in the chorus of his song Pilgrim in the Temple of Love. It remains, perhaps, the most unexpected citation in the history of American cult cinema. Super Vixens earned $8 million on a budget of $100,000. It was RUSS MEYER's greatest commercial triumph since Beyond the Valley of the Dolls, a vindication of every instinct he had trusted when 2 consecutive films had left him with his back against the wall. Severin Films released fully restored Blu-ray edition in January 2025. Partnering with the RUSS MEYER Trust to return the film to audiences in a form that finally honors its extraordinary visual craft. 50 years after its release, the conversation around Super Vixens is still happening. Because what RUSS MEYER understood and what Uschi Digard and Colleen Brennan embodied on screen was that the most powerful stories are always the ones the mainstream wasn't ready for. That is the legacy of Super Vixens, and the legacy of the women who made it unforgettable. If this is the kind of deep dive storytelling you come here for, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Drop the name of the Golden Age film or performer you want us to cover next in the comments below. We read every one. We'll be back soon with another chapter from the golden age of American cinema. Until then, keep watching, keep discovering. These stories deserve to be told.